Okay. We should record it so we can play it tomorrow night. Are we on? Good. You can pause the recording till we start the Seder. I just want to make sure we're on live. There we are. We are on. We are on. We are on. It says Shoshana Wu is with us. Hi, Shoshana. Captions are auto-generated. Wonderful. This is wonderful. I want to see how many people are watching us. Good evening, Hag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein, joined tonight by the family Fox to share with you Seder night, Pesach night here in Southern California, where it's beautiful springtime evening, and we're ready to celebrate our exodus from Egypt. Tonight is a night we've waited for all year long. We're together, we're healthy, we're celebrating the holiday, we're celebrating our freedom. So wherever you are, and wherever you're with, and if you're by yourself, you're with us tonight, and we're delighted to have you at our tables. We wish you Hag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome. Tonight is a night to sing, to celebrate. Tonight is a night to cultivate hope. Tonight is a night to tell great stories of our exodus from Egypt and our redemption from Pharaoh and our travels across the wilderness toward a promised land. Tonight, we are delighted to have you in our VBS Shalom family. Let's begin tonight with Hadlakat Nerot, with the lighting of candles for Shabbos and Yontif. We'll ask Cantor Judy Fox, joined by her family, to lead us in benching licht.
Hag Sameach. Light this little candle. One. Everyone, please join in. Bring our beautiful light spirit in. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kishan b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת ויום טוב.
Amen. Tonight, we welcome everyone, and we're so grateful to be together in good health to celebrate this holiday together as families. So tonight, we lift a full cup of wine. We'll drink 4 cups tonight, believe it or not. The first cup is the cup of sanctification, to say Kiddush, to sanctify the sanctity of this special day, the holiness of this day. The second cup will come at the end of our telling of the story, to tell the story of our history and our redemption. The third cup comes at the end of dinner to say thank you, gratitude for the meal we've eaten. And the fourth cup is the cup of tomorrow, the cup of hope. So our first cup, lift a cup of wine wherever you are. If it's Manischewitz, if it's Cabernet, if it's Chablis or Chardonnay, lift a cup of wine, and we'll ask Fox, the Cantor's Fox, to join us, to lead us in the recitation of Shabbos Yontif Kiddush.
יום השישי, ויחולו השמיים והארץ, וכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי, מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי, מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי, ויקדש אותו כבו שבת מכל מלאכתו, אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. חברים ורבנן ורבותיי, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן.
Amen.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העם, ורוממנו מכל השון, וקידשנו במצוותיו. ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה, מועדים לשמחה, חגים וזמנים לששון. את יום חג השבת הזה, ואת יום חג המצות הזה, זמן חירותנו באהבה מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כיוונו אחרתה, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת ומועדי קודשך באהבה וברצון, בשמחה וששון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת וישראל והזמן
שהחיינו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
L'chaim. This is what Jewish families have done for 4,000 years. We've gathered together to tell a story because the Torah commands us to tell the story and to tell it in the first person. We'll say a little bit later in the Seder, B'chol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu yatsa b'Mitzrayim. Every one of us has to experience that bitterness of slavery and this infinite sweetness of freedom. Every one of us has to tell the story, Ba'avur zeh shasali Adonai b'tzeiti Mitzrayim, because I came out of Egypt. Every one of us has to be in the moment. And so tonight we are at the table on our last night in Egypt. It is our last night in Egypt. We were slaves. Our parents are slaves. Their parents were slaves. Their parents were slaves. Tomorrow, we will be free. So tonight we gather as the 10th plague surrounds us, as a world filled with brokenness and sadness and destruction surrounds us. Tonight we gather as families to tell this story and to hold each other. Tonight we will tell the story as vividly as we can. The Haggadah is the script. The table is a stage. The food is our props, and the story is an ancient story. So we begin this story by washing our hands or chatz. There's no bracha because this is just the washing before a religious rite. And then reach into the Seder plate before you and take something green, karpas or celery or lettuce or something green. Dip it in the salt water. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'adama. Blessed is God who has created the universe and given us the fruit of the earth. Amen.
Amen.
And with karpas, we remember that springtime is here. And springtime means new life, new possibilities. That is the gift. You see, a slave knows nothing new. A slave's tomorrow is always the same as his yesterday. But a free person knows that every tomorrow brings possibilities. Every tomorrow means we can dream. Every tomorrow brings something novel and revolutionary in the world. And so springtime comes. It is a reminder that life is reborn and there are possibilities in the world planted there for us to discover. Family Fox, anything new happened to you this year? Anything new come your way this year?
A lot.
A what?
A lot. Quite a bit happened this year.
Give us one new thing that happened to you this year.
We never heard about COVID before this last 2 years, and we had it in a very mild form at the same time, but nothing serious, thank God.
Thank God.
And most of our friends didn't have it. About half, maybe close to half, had it, and only a few in a serious way. But thank God we're all here.
Amen.
And we helped one another, and Valley Bet Shalom, especially at Valley Bet Shalom, we tried to help one
another. Amen. Amen. So this year, my family welcomes a new granddaughter who's actually crying in the other room. You can hear her if you listen carefully, because she just woke up from her nap ready to make Seder, and she's discovered that she has to wait a few minutes till we're done. But that all of a sudden, life is very different. And our kids are together and we're all healthy. So let's give thanks for the new of this year. So we take there are 3 matzahs on the table. We take one of the matzahs out, we break it in half, we wrap it up. And this matzah is going to be the matzah that we'll eat later for dessert for Afikoman. We'll hide it right here. And whoever finds it earns a new car and a college education. So we'll put it right over here. And matzah, as everything in the Seder, has 2 meanings. At the beginning of the Seder, matzah is the bread of slaves. But at the end of the Seder, matzah will be the bread of redemption. Halachma anya da'achlu avatana ba'ara de Mitzrayim. This is the bread of slaves. Flat and tasteless and dry, it will soon become the flavor of our redemption. Halachma anya.
Halachma anya di achalu. Achalu avatana be'ara demitzrayim be'ara demitzrayim kodifin yete veichol koditzrich yete veivsa hashata haba lishana Haba be'ara de'Yisrael Hashata Avdei Shana Haba Benechorim Benechorim.
Halachma anya da'achlu avatana da'ara de Mitzrayim. This flat, dry, tasteless bread that we ate in the land of Egypt. Told dichvin yete v'yechul. Anyone who is in need, come sit with us, hear the story, and share our feast. Called disrich yete v'yifsach. Anyone whose heart is open and whose need, her soul is welcome, they're welcome to come and share our Pesach. Hashata acha. This year, here we are. In Golas, no matter how sweet it is still, after all, Golas. Hashana haba da'ara Yisrael. Maybe next year we'll all be in Israel. Hashata avdei l'shana haba b'nei chorin. This year we are slaves. Next year we certainly will be free. The Magid section, the telling of the story. We welcome the children of the table to ask us some questions about why tonight is different. They look at the Seder plate, they look at the dinner, they see that everything is different. This is not the same way we always eat dinner. What is different about tonight? Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot.
Halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh,
Kulo Matzah. Halayla hazeh, halayla zeh, Kulo Matzah.
Shabbat Hallelujah. Anu Oflim
She'ar Yerakot, She'ar Yerakot. Halayla zeh, halayla zeh, Maror, maror. Halayla zeh, halayla zeh, maror, maror.
Einanu Mativim
Afilu b'amechad, afilu b'amechad. Halayla zeh, halayla zeh, shetei be'amim. Halayla zeh, halayla zeh, shetei be'amim.
Shabbat Hallelujah. Anu Oflim Ben Yoshvinu
Ben yoshvinu ben misubim. Halayla zeh, halayla zeh, kulanu misubim. Halayla zeh, halayla zeh, kulanu misubim.
Manishtana halayla hazemi kala leilot. Tonight is a different night because tonight we're going to tell a great story. And what you've asked is about all the symbols on the table. On all other nights, we eat any kind of bread. Tonight, only matzah. On all other nights, we eat all kinds of vegetables. Tonight, only maror, bitter. On all other nights, we're not allowed to play with the food. Tonight, everybody's playing with the food. We're dipping things and other things. On all the nights, we have to sit up straight at the table. Tonight, we can all have a little bit of a slouch and take our time and go slowly, because tonight is a night to celebrate. Keneged arba banim dibra Torah, echad chacham ve'echad rasha ve'echad tam ve'echad she'eno yodei lishol. And every child who asks a question, no matter what their capacity, every child, and no matter what their attitude, every child who comes to the table deserves to have an answer to their questions. 4 times in the Torah says your child is going to ask you, what are you doing? And so the Midrash of the rabbi said this refers to 4 different attitudes, 4 different kinds of Jewish people, 4 different kinds of human souls who come to our Seder. One is the Chacham who is engaged, and one is the Rasha who is alien, and one is the Tam who is filled with wonder, and one is She'eno Yodei Lishol who is the silent one. And all through Jewish history, artists have depicted these because they suggest so many different attitudes among us. And in life, every one of us has been this way too. Every one of us has sometimes been engaged and sometimes alienated, sometimes filled with wonder and sometimes struck silent. So let's tell the story. Keneged arba banim, please.
Chacham Mahu Omer, the wise one asks, what is the meaning of the laws and traditions God has commanded? Deuteronomy 6:20, you should teach him all the traditions of Passover, even to the last detail.
Rasha Mahu Omer. The wicked one asks, what does this ritual mean to you? Exodus 12:26. By using the expression to you, he excludes himself from his people and denies God. Shake his arrogance and say to him, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. Exodus 13:8. For me and not for him, for had he been in Egypt, he would not have been freed.
Tam Mahu Omer, simple one asks, what is all this? You should tell him, it was with all a mighty hand that the Lord took us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Exodus 13:4.
Look, as for the one who does not know how to ask, you should open the discussion for him as it is written, and you shall explain to your child on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. Exodus 13:8.
Our children have asked us very good questions and they deserve answers. So let's tell them the story. Let's tell them the story of who we really are, because you need to understand that we aren't who we appear to be. On the outside, we are like everyone else. We walk the streets and do business, go to school and learn, enjoy the fruits and blessings of this place. But on the inside, we carry memories. We carry a very special history. So here is the history that we celebrate tonight. The first Jewish people were Abraham and Sarah, called by God to leave their home, Lech Lecha Me'artzecha, to leave their home in Mesopotamia and travel to the land of Canaan. And their son was Yitzchak, Isaac, who married Rivka, and their sons were Jacob and Esau. And Jacob was the one who took the blessing and took the mantle of leadership of the family. And he had 12 sons and a daughter. And among his sons was a genius, a little one named Joseph, who was sent down into Egypt by his brothers. And there, remarkably, he became the prime minister of all of Egypt. And when famine came to the land, Joseph engineered a plot to protect all of humanity from that famine. And all of humanity came down into Egypt to find food, including our family, including the Jewish family. And when Joseph saw his family, they were reunited and they prospered. And then there rose a new Pharaoh. And that new Pharaoh did not know Joseph, did not know what he had done for the world and for the people Egypt. That new Pharaoh did not know. And so he became afraid of the growing power of the Israelite people, afraid that they would gather with their enemies, afraid that they would take over. And he decided to limit them by enslaving them. And we became slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And there is no state of being, no status, no job, no way in the world that is worse, that is lower, that is more, that is sadder than being a slave. Avadim hayinu leFaro b'Mitzrayim.
Avadim hayinu, hayinu, ata b'nechorim, b'nechorim. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorim. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorim,
For generations, we slaved for the Pharaoh and built the cities and the monuments and the tombs of the pharaohs. And slavery weighed upon us, and we began to weep and to cry. And we cried out to the God of our ancestors to save us. And the God of our ancestors sent a redeemer. There was one Jewish couple, Amram and Yocheved, who saved their son Moshe by putting him into a basket and sending him down the Nile. And remarkably, he was taken in and adopted by the daughter of Pharaoh and raised as a prince of Egypt. And as a prince of Egypt, he came out one day and he saw his people slaving under the sun and under the lash and crying in their pain. And Moshe, even though he was a prince of Egypt, was moved, was touched, and realized this is not the way. This is not the way of the world. He saw one particular Israelite being beaten by a slave master, and he rose up and he struck down that slave master. And then he had to run away because he became a fugitive from Pharaoh's police. He went to Midian, out into the desert, where he lived for 40 years as a shepherd in the desert. And one day on the mountain where he shepherded his sheep, there was the strangest sight, a bush that burned but was not burning up. Moshe knew this was a sign, and he came close. And from that bush, he heard the voice of God tell him, "Go down to Egypt and free my people. Stand before the Pharaoh and tell the Pharaoh to let my people go." But Moshe was afraid to do that. He refused. He refused again and again, and God pushed him and pushed him. Sometimes a man needs to be pushed to do what he needs to do. And finally, he took up the courage to go. And he stood before the great Pharaoh who was once his half-brother. He stood before the great Pharaoh Ramses and said those words which have become famous throughout the world, through every enslaved person in the world. let my people go.
When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. The Lord told Moses what to do. Let my people go to lead the children of Israel through. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell Pharaoh to let my people go.
Even though the Israelites were the slaves, Pharaoh too was a slave. He was a slave to his arrogance, a slave to his pride, a slave to his assumptions about human beings. He was a slave to his evil. And no matter how destructive the policies of his country were, he could not bend and he could not change. Moses said to Pharaoh, if you don't let them go, then plagues will descend upon Egypt. Each plague dismantling another part of Egypt's civilization, its economy, its culture, its faith, each plague destroying a piece of Pharaoh himself, and yet Pharaoh could not let them go. The first plague, the Nile turned to blood, naturally, because they had been killing Israelite babies by throwing them into the Nile. And the second plague was frogs everywhere. And when we were kids, we used to sing a song about those frogs. One morning when Pharaoh awoke in his bed, there were frogs on his head and frogs on his bed, frogs on his nose and frogs on his toes, frogs here, frogs there, jumping froggies everywhere, even in his underwear. There were frogs everywhere. But it wasn't just frogs. One by one, each of the points of pride that connected Egypt to its past, each of the powers of Egypt were dismantled by God. And each time Pharaoh said, I'll relent, take your people, and then changed his mind as his heart was hardened. Sometimes a man can be a slave to his own evil, no matter how brutal that evil is. So we recite the plagues, and according to tradition, we dip out a little wine for each plague, because while we recite the plagues and the plagues were necessary to bring us redemption, we take no joy. We have no celebration of the suffering of people, even people who are our enemies. Ready? Dam,
Dam,
Svardea,
Svardea,
Kinim,
Kinim,
Arov,
Arov,
Dever,
Dever,
Shehin,
Shekin,
Barad,
Barad,
Arbe,
Arbe,
Choshe,
Moshe,
Makat Bechorot.
Makat Bechorot.
The Nile turned to blood, and from the Nile jumped thousands and millions of frogs, and then came lice, and then the beasts of Egypt died. All of the animals died, and then blight killed all of the domesticated animals. Boils and hail and locusts destroyed all the crops and all the buildings. Darkness descended across Egypt, and one man couldn't see the face of another. And finally, the last, the most terrifying plague, the firstborn of Egypt. Every firstborn, from the firstborn of Pharaoh to the firstborn of the lowest family in all of Egypt, the firstborn were taken, were killed. And that night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, leave my land, take your people, take your children, take your crops, take your flocks, go, just go. And so we ran. And we ran and we ran so fast, we didn't have time to let pizza rise, let the bread rise. We didn't have time to take anything except the flat bread of slaves. That's all we had to eat. We ran. We didn't have provisions. We just ran into the desert, and we ran until we came to the Red Sea. And for a moment, we dared to dream, could it be that we are free? Could it be that our parents were slaves and their parents slaves and our children might yet be free? Could it be? But no, because Pharaoh changed his mind one last time and mounted his chariots and came to kill us, to destroy us as a sacrifice to his deep arrogance and his evil. And when we saw Pharaoh behind us and the sea ahead of us, we screamed to Moses, why did you do this to us? And Moses said, Shah, be quiet and just watch. And God told Moses, hold your arm across the sea, and the sea will split, and you will cross in safety. And Moses held his arm, and the sea split, and we crossed in safety. And you know, when the ancient rabbis read that story, they said, something's missing. Something's missing. It's a magnificent story, but something's missing. Because God had done everything for us. God had sent the plagues, and God had humiliated the Pharaoh, and God had brought us out of Egypt. God was waiting. So according to the Midrash in the tradition, when Moses holds his arm across the sea, nothing happens. And he tries it again and nothing happens. And he's beginning to sweat a little bit. And he reads the instruction on the stick, like when in doubt, hold stick, and it doesn't work. And Moses couldn't figure out why. Why won't it work? And then he realized God was waiting. Moses realized that, and one other man, whose name in the Midrash, the Midrash names him as Nachshon ben Aminadav, the prince of the tribe of Judah, he realized. And so Nachshon, he jumps in the water. And he wades out to his knees, and his family says, come back, idiot, you don't know how to swim, come back. He waves them off, goes into the water, comes to his waist, and his wife says, please, Bubba, come back, don't go. The water comes up to his chest, and his children beg him, Papa, come back. He waves at them because he knows exactly what he must do. He takes one more step, and he descends beneath the waves, and the life breath within him leaves him. And at that moment, says the Midrash, and only at that moment, does the sea split, and do we cross? Because if redemption is going to come, somebody has to jump into the water. And we crossed to the other side. And then Moses held his arms up, and the sea came back on top of the Pharaoh. And then for the first time, we dared to breathe as free people. And we turned around and looked out at the vast expanse of the wilderness beyond. And we realized that out there is the promised land that we had talked about for generations and generations and generations. And finally, after 430 years in Egypt, we were free people. And so it is that every year we do this meal and we tell that story so that we can feel the bitterness of slavery and we can feel and taste the sweetness of freedom. And not just that freedom, but every miracle that has occurred to us in all the generations of our people, because every one of those miracles is enough to make us believers, to help us understand that there are possibilities built into the world, to help us know that there is hope, that there is hope. And so we sing this song, the most famous song of the Seder, the song that we all wait all year to sing, because it is a song of miracle, a song of gratitude, and a song of hope.
Ilu Natan, Ilu Hotzianu Mimitzrayim, Hotzianu Mimitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
Shabbat natan lanu et Shabbat
Dayenu.
Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
Ilu natan lanu et Torah natan lanu et Torah dayenu.
Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
How many miracles, Dayenu. Had God taken us out of Egypt, and that was the only miracle we knew, everybody say, Dayenu.
Dayenu.
It would have been enough. And had God carried us across the sea, Dayenu. It would have been enough. You missed your cue. And had God cared for us in the wilderness for 40 long fetchy years, Dayenu. It would have been enough. And had God given us the Shabbat, Dayenu. And had God given us the Torah, Dayenu. And had God brought us to the land of Israel, Dayenu. And now, in our generation, had God brought us back to the land of Israel, Dayenu. And had God returned us to the city of Yerushalayim, Dayenu. And had God given us the power to redeem our brothers and sisters from Europe and from Russia and from Ethiopia and from all the corners of the world, and this year from Ukraine, Dayenu. It would have been enough. Bechol dor vador chayav adam leot et atzmo ki ilu yatsa b'Mitzrayim she'namar v'yigadet lebincha b'yom hahu le'mor ba'avur zeh she'asa li Adonai b'tzeiti miMitzrayim. All of us have to tell the story in the first person. We were in Egypt and we became free, and we are here tonight. Why? Because we saw the miracles of Egypt and we experienced them. Rabban Gamliel, who was the great leader of the Jewish people in the very first century after the destruction of the temple, he said we have to make sure to answer our children's questions. So let's be sure we say it out loud. The bone on the Seder plate is the Pesach. When the great temple of Jerusalem was still in existence, our ancestors ate a special sacrificial offering called the Pesach. Pesach means to pass over, to protect. The offering was eaten as a symbol that God protected us. Even as the destroyer went through Egypt, God protected us and gave us the opportunity to leave Egypt. That's the Pesach. And the matzah, why do we eat matzah? Because matzah is the bread of slaves, and we have to taste the dry, tasteless life of slaves. And matzah is the bread of redemption, of liberation. And we have to taste the sweet taste of liberation. And maror, why are we eating bitter foods? So that we can taste the bitterness of anyone who is enslaved. We can remember what it was like to be enslaved. And therefore, we can cherish our opportunity to be free and the responsibility to free anyone who finds themselves enslaved as we once were. And so we must sing the songs of Hallel, sing songs of celebration, of rescue, sing songs of thanksgiving for the gifts of this Pesach night and for the liberation that we have celebrated. B'tzeit Yisrael miMitzrayim.
B'tzeit Yisrael miMitzrayim Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez hayta Yehuda lekadsho Yisrael am shelo hayam ra vayanos hayarden Yisrov le'achor he'arim ragdu cherim Gebaot kivnei tzon malechayam kifkanus hayarden Yisrov le'achor he'arim tigidu cherim Gebaot kivnei tzon milifnei Adon kuli aretz Milivnei Eloah Yaakov. Ha'oli atzor agamayim. Halamish lemaylo mayim b'tzeit Yisrael. Mitzrayim beit Yaakov. Me'am Elohes hayta Yehuda. Lekodsho Yisrael.
Yishkoch, beautiful. And now we raise a full cup of wine. The second cup is the cup of history, to tell the story of our redemption and to celebrate. Praised are you, Lord God, whose presence fills the universe, who redeemed us and our ancestors from Egypt, and has us to this night when we eat matzah and moror. Lord God and God of our ancestors, enable us to celebrate in peace other holy days and festivals, joyful in the rebuilding of your city, Yerushalayim, and joyful in your service. We will sing a new song of thanksgiving for our redemption and our spiritual liberation. Praised are you, Lord God, Redeemer of the people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei peri agafen l'chaim. Now, we get to eat all of these wonderful symbolic foods, so we wash our hands a second time, and this time we make the bracha, Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam, asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Everyone take a big piece of matzah. First time we eat matzah this year. 2 brachot on the matzah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Baruch Adonai melech haolam, asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. Amen. Now, as is custom, maror. Take a little of the horseradish or the maror or the wasabi or the jalapeno or whatever you're using for bitter food. Dip it in the sweet charoset, because history teaches us that life is bittersweet. It has its miracles and it has its tragedies, and we are together to celebrate them all. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror. Amen.
Amen.
The great Rabbi Hillel combined all the foods, the Pesach, the matzah, the maror, the harosa. I'm sure he threw in a canadel or two as well and made a giant sandwich out of it all. And that way he got through Seder night without eating too much. I can't do that, but we'll try the best we can. Cantor's Fox, lead us in a song before we finish.
Okay, let's go to one that almost everybody knows, if not everybody, and it's going to be at the end, because we're going to leave you during your meal. Chad Gadya. Let's go through it. We'll go fairly slowly so we can include everybody. It's on page 29. 29. Ready? Here we go. Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya. Dezabin Abba Bidrezuze. Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya. Ve'ata shunra ve'achla legadya. Dezabin Abba Bidrezuze. Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya. Ve'ata chalba v'nashach l'shunra te'achla legadya. Dezabin Abba Bidrezuze. Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya. Ve'ata chutra v'hika lechalba v'nashach l'shunra de'achla legadya. Dezabin Abba Bidrezuze. Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya.
That's right.
Ve'ata.
Let's go to the end, the last paragraph.
Oh,
that way,
okay.
we've got covered everything.
Everything. So
All right?
join us on the next page, 30. The last section will go slowly, so we repeat everything. Ve'ata hakadosh baruch hu v'shachat lemalach hamavet v'shachat letorah v'shata lemaya v'chavla lenura v'sarav lechutra דהיקה לכלבה, דנשך לשירה, דאכלה לגיה, דזבין אבא, ביזרזוזת, And you know, it's traditional to close the Seder with Lishana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Do you have a comment before that, Rabbi Feinstein, or can we go to Lishana Haba'ah? Everybody join us. Lishana Haba'ah, Lishana Haba'ah, Lishana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Lishana Haba'ah, Lishana Haba'ah, Lishana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Lishana Haba'ah, Lishana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Lishana Haba'ah, Lishana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Lishana Haba'ah, Lishana Haba'ah, Lishana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Chag Sameach.
L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. May next year we be celebrating Pesach in a healthier world and a more peaceful world and a whole world and a world where we care for each other and protect each other. But until then, thank you for sharing this wonderful holiday with us. Thank you to the family Fox, to Shira and Shana, to Judy and Herschel. Thank you for sharing your spirits and your voices with us. Many, many blessings for a sweet and a happy and a Zisen Pesach, a sweet Pesach. And to everyone who's joined us tonight, a sweet and a happy and a wonderful Pesach. A quick announcement. Tomorrow morning, there'll be Torah study online at 9 o'clock because we got to learn even though it's Pesach. And at 9:30, we'll be in person and online at Valley Beth Shalom to celebrate Shabbos and to celebrate Pesach. 9:30, not 10, because we have a lot more service to do. Tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, and then another Seder tomorrow night. And if you like this one, you can just play it again because it'll be up online, right? And then Sunday morning, we'll have service, but only online. We're not going to do it in person because we want to let the crew at Valley Beth Shalom have the day with their family, their holiday. So Sunday morning, 9:30 online, Facebook and YouTube. All week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7:30 in person, 6 o'clock in the evening. At Friday morning, of course, is Yontif, 9:30. And then next Shabbos, of course, is the last day. We'll be doing Yisker. I want to wish you and yours, everyone you care for, a sweet and a Zisen Pesach, a sweet Pesach, a happy Pesach, a peaceful Pesach. And thank you to the Foxes. Thank you to everyone who's joined. Thank you to Yona, who took care of all of that those wonderful visual effects. We wish everybody a happy, healthy Pesach. Shana Tova and Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim.